We don't need you, my daughter says with a smile that feels like a slap, and the whole table pretends not to hear. I'm still halfway out of my coat when she says it. The front door of Vanessa's house in Lake Oswego swings shut behind me, and I'm standing in a spotless entryway that looks like it belongs in a magazine. Pale hardwood floors, a white console table with carefully arranged fall decor, a candle that smells like pumpkin, and something expensive I can't pronounce. I'm holding the pie I baked, pecan, a little uneven at the edges, and all at once I feel like I've dragged mud onto her stage. Vanessa's eyes drift down to my thrift store coat, the one Mark and I found for $12 at a secondhand shop off Division. "Wow, Mom," she says, laughing lightly. "You didn't have anything nicer?" The words sound casual, but they land heavy. Heat creeps into my face, that old familiar sting of not measuring up. It isn't just the coat she's judging, it's my whole life wrapped up inside it. Before I can answer, she's already moved on, leaning in for an air kiss, careful not to smudge her lipstick. "You brought pie?" She looks at the foil pan the way someone looks at a child's craft project. "We already have dessert catered, but we'll see if there's space." Space, as if my pie is clutter, as if I am. Tyler steps in, polite and gentle. "Hey Heidi, happy Thanksgiving," he says, taking the pie from my hands. His voice is warm, but he doesn't contradict her. He doesn't say the pie looks good. He doesn't say my coat is fine. He smooths it over, the way he always does. That quiet neutrality twists something in my chest, this unspoken agreement to let me be picked apart without resistance. From the living room comes the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. People I barely know, already comfortable in her perfect house. I follow Vanessa down the hallway, past framed black and white photos of her and Tyler, beaches, wine country, rooftop bars. There isn't a single picture of me or Mark. There never is. Tonight it feels like proof, sealed behind glass. I don't fit the brand. The dining room looks staged for television. A long rustic table, linen runner, gold-rimmed plates, crystal glasses, tiny handwritten place cards. I scan for my name, suddenly afraid I'll knock something over. I finally find it. Mom, written in Vanessa's neat script, placed at the far end of the table beside Mark. Not Heidi, just Mom. A label, not a person. As guests filter in, Vanessa introduces me the way she introduces vendors. "This is my mom," she tells Monica, a client. She's very simple. She insisted on bringing her own pie. I catch the tight smile on Monica's face, the quick glance at my sweater, my hands. Heat crawls up my neck. Every word, simple, insisted, is weighted, as if I'm a stubborn child who doesn't understand how things are done. Elaine, Tyler's mother, squeezes my hand under the table. "Good to see you, Heidi," she whispers. For a moment, I can breathe. Then Jenna sits across from me, and I hear Vanessa murmur with a soft laugh. "I told you, she never really got the whole presentation thing." Presentation, that one hurts more than I want to admit. It shrinks years of sewing curtains, repainting walls, stretching grocery money into a failure to match an aesthetic. Once we sit down, I become aware of everything. How I hold my fork, how loudly I chew. My sweater feels too bright, my scarf too old. I catch Vanessa watching me, and each time our eyes meet, she gives that same thin, polished smile. She corrects how I pass a bowl, re-explains the menu as if I can't read. Each moment is small, almost nothing, but together they stack into something heavy. Then it happens. Someone compliments the house, the food, the evening. Vanessa laughs. "I worked so hard to make this a nice day, and then..." Her gaze lands on me, my coat draped over the chair, my old scarf, the inexpensive pie dish at the end of the table. "Why did you even come like that, Mom?" The room goes quiet. My fork freezes halfway to my mouth. My chest feels hollow, like the air's been knocked out of it. The words are shaped like a joke, but there's no kindness in her face, only irritation, embarrassment, as if I've ruined her picture. Around the table, people look down at their plates. No one speaks. Their silence hurts almost as much as her words. Something in me finally breaks. Not loudly, not dramatically, more like a thread snapping. I set my fork down. The clink sounds too loud. I push my chair back carefully so it doesn't scrape. My hands are shaking, but my voice is steady when I turn to Mark. Let's go home. He doesn't argue. That simple loyalty makes my eyes burn. Vanessa stares at me, shocked. Mom, don't be ridiculous, she snaps. You're making this weird. Every word is in order. Sit down, swallow it, behave. The same script she's used for years. But I stand anyway. I walk back down that beautiful hallway, past the photos that don't include me, and each step feels like a small act of defiance. At the door, as I pull on my coat, Mrs. Klein, the neighbor, catches my arm. You don't deserve this, she murmurs. 6 words, they land like a lifeline. For the first time all night, I believe them. When the door closes behind us and the cold Oregon air hits my face, resentment still burns in my chest, but beneath it, there's something else, a thin, fragile line of relief. I walked out. I didn't stay to be the punchline. I don't know it yet, but that quiet choice is the first real crack in Vanessa's perfect world. By the time we get back to our apartment, my hands are still shaking. Mark unlocks the door, and the familiar smell of coffee and old wood wraps around me. Our small kitchen looks exactly the same as always. The chipped counter, the tiny table, the 2 mismatched chairs. I set my purse down, and suddenly the weight of the evening crashes into me. I left my own daughter's house like an unwanted guest. The resentment settles heavy in my chest, like pressure from the inside. We make tea without talking much at first. The kettle whistles, cups clink, and the silence feels loud. I can't stop replaying Vanessa's face, the way she looked me up and down, the way she asked why I came like that. Every word had been polished, polite, and still razor sharp. It wasn't just what she said at the table. It was everything around it. The glance at my coat, the talk of catered desserts beside my homemade pie, the way she made sure everyone knew I didn't fit her image. Each memory tightens my jaw. I feel used, pushed aside, like I only exist when I make her look good. Mark sets a mug in front of me and reaches for my hand. Before he can say anything, my phone buzzes on the table. Then his phone buzzes too. The sound makes me jump. For a moment, I think it's Vanessa, ready to correct me again, to tell me how I embarrassed her. My stomach twists. I resent how much power she still has, that a simple sound can make me feel small. But it isn't her. It's Elaine. Heidi, I am so sorry. Vanessa was out of line. You did nothing wrong. I read it twice. The word sorry makes my eyes burn. Elaine writes that she tried to speak up, that she couldn't sit there and pretend it was a joke. As I read, something hot and bitter rises beneath the hurt. Vanessa put me down in front of her in-laws, in front of people who barely know me, like I was something she needed to manage. I think of all the times I babysat so they could go out, the little gifts I brought over the years. None of it mattered. To her, my value depends on how well I fit her picture. Another message comes in, this time from Jenna. I'm embarrassed by how she treated you. You didn't deserve that. I stare at the word embarrassed. I know she means embarrassed for me, but part of me bristles at that too. My daughter turned me into something people cringed at. Vanessa didn't just hurt me. She made me into a story at her table. The resentment flares hotter. How many times has she done this when I wasn't there? More messages follow. Some say they felt uncomfortable. One says, she went too far tonight. Another adds, you were very gracious. I don't feel gracious. I feel exposed and exhausted. But beneath their words, I hear something else. They saw her. They saw how she talks to me. That brings a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that I'm not imagining it. Anger that it took so long for anyone else to notice. Later, Mark tells me what I didn't hear. He says that after we left, Vanessa tried to laugh it off. She said something like, my mom has never really fit into this kind of setting. The words hit me like ice water. Never fit in. Hearing it out loud makes my throat tighten. I've spent my whole life showing up for her, and with one sentence, she reduces me to an embarrassment. Mark also tells me about Ryan and Monica. Ryan looked upset. He says, Monica didn't like it either. He describes how Ryan went quiet after Vanessa's comment, how Monica asked if I was okay right there at the table. I picture them watching my daughter treat me like a prop, listening as she brushed me aside as someone who would never belong. Part of me is glad they saw it. Another part is furious that Vanessa was willing to do that in front of people who matter to her future. She's so sure I'll take it that she risks everything and still pushes me down. Mark says he could tell Ryan was rethinking things, that he didn't like what he saw. I take a slow breath. Vanessa did that herself, not me. Her words, her tone, her need to lift herself by making me smaller. The resentment I feel isn't just about tonight. It's about years of the same pattern. But tonight, something shifted. Other people saw it. They named it. And as I sit at our small table, my phone buzzing beside my tea, I realize I'm no longer sure I want to protect her from the consequences of her own behavior. The phone rings late, long after the messages stop buzzing. The sound tightens my stomach. I see her name on the screen, Vanessa. For a moment, I consider letting it go to voicemail. I'm exhausted, my eyes ache, and I can still hear her voice at the table asking why I came like that. But habits formed over a lifetime don't disappear easily. I take a breath and answer. Hello. She doesn't return the greeting. Mom, what was that? Her voice is tight, edged with anger, like I'm a problem she needs to correct. You walked out in front of everyone. Do you have any idea how that looked? There it is. How it looked, not how I felt, not whether I was hurt, just the image. My chest tightens and I lower myself onto the edge of the couch because my legs suddenly feel unsteady. I left because you were unkind, I say carefully. My voice sounds small to me, but it doesn't shake. You asked why I even came, in front of everyone. She lets out a short, cold laugh. Oh, please, it was a joke. You always take things so personally. You made a scene, Mom. People are talking. Do you know how embarrassing that is for me? Embarrassing for her, never painful for me. Resentment flares under my skin, hot and immediate. I want to ask if it embarrassed her when she picked apart my clothes and my pie. Instead, I sit there with the phone pressed to my ear, listening as my daughter talks to me like a child who misbehaved. I didn't raise my voice, I say quietly. I just left. You stormed out in the middle of dinner, she snaps, in front of clients. Monica even asked if you were okay. It made everything awkward. I worked so hard on tonight and you ruined it. Again. Again. The word cuts deeper than the rest. She's used it before. When I blinked in photos, when I asked questions, when I showed up in clothes she thought were too plain. It always stung. Tonight it weighs heavier because I know I didn't ruin anything. She did. I think of Elaine's message, of Jenna's, of how they said she went too far. I want to tell Vanessa that. I want to say people saw her, but I already know how she'd spin it, how I'd become the one turning others against her. You should call Monica, she goes on, and Ryan. Tell them you overreacted, that you're just sensitive. It would help if you owned it. You know how much this promotion means to me. There it is, the real reason for the call. Not concern, not regret. Fear for her promotion. She wants me to fold myself into something smaller so she can feel safe. Something inside me turns cold and clear. I remember helping her with her first apartment, scraping together money for the deposit, buying her a used couch. She cried and promised she'd never forget. I remember years earlier, sitting in a small office near a lake in Central Oregon, signing papers with Mark. We added Vanessa's name to the deed of the family cabin. My hand shook as I held the pen because it felt like such a big gift. Later, standing on the deck, I told Mark, "This way she'll always have a place that's ours." We even set aside a savings account, $85,000, for her future. I thought I was giving her love and security. Listening to her now, I feel that memory twist. I paid for so much of her life, and somehow I am still the one who is always too much or not enough. I could have yelled tonight, I say slowly, but I didn't. I just left. That was worse, she says immediately. You made me look bad. You always do this. You make everything about you. For once, could you think about how your behavior affects me? I need you to fix this. Call them. Tell them you were upset and that I didn't mean anything by it. You know how sensitive you are. The script is painfully familiar. I ruin things. I'm too sensitive. I'm responsible for repairing the damage she causes. The resentment isn't background noise anymore. It sits solidly in the center of my chest. For a moment, I imagine giving her what she wants, making the calls, saying I overreacted. I picture the relief in her voice. I could keep the peace. I always have. But then I see her smirk at the table. I hear, "Why did you even come like that?" I remember the silence that followed and the messages afterward, from people who said they were sorry, who said she crossed a line. I remember the cabin by the lake, the account set aside for her future. "No," I say. There's a pause. "What did you say?" "I said no," I repeat calmly. "I'm not calling anyone. I'm not saying I overreacted. I'm not covering for you. I'm done being your target." She scoffs. "You're being dramatic. You always blow things out of proportion. You'll regret this when things cool down." Maybe I will, but right now, sitting on my worn couch with Mark watching me from across the room, I feel something new. Quiet, steady strength. For once, I'm not arguing myself out of my own feelings. I'm not trading my dignity for her comfort. "You keep saying I ruin things," I say. "I paid for so much in your life. I helped you get started. I put your name on things that belong to me, and it still isn't enough. I think I'm finally hearing that." "What is that supposed to mean?" she demands. There's fear beneath the anger now. I hear it. "It means I'm going to think carefully about what I leave in your hands," I say, "and I'm done pretending this doesn't hurt." She starts to argue again, but I've had enough. "I'm tired, Vanessa. I'm going to bed." I end the call before she can pour more blame into my ear. I set the phone down on the coffee table. My hand is trembling, but my heart feels steady. Mark moves closer and says quietly, "You know, we still own that cabin. We still control that account. You don't have to keep giving everything to someone who treats you like this." His words sink in. For the first time, I see clearly that my love and my money are not automatic gifts she's entitled to no matter how she behaves. I sit there in the dim light, resentment still burning, but beside it now is something new and unmistakable. I have choices, and I'm finally ready to make them. 2 days after Thanksgiving, I sit at our kitchen table with my phone in my hand, staring at Rebecca Shaw's number on the screen. My tea has gone cold. Mark sits across from me, watching without saying a word. Vanessa's voice still echoes in my head, calling me dramatic, saying I ruined her dinner, telling me to fix things with her coworkers and her client. Every word she threw at me that night shifted the blame onto my shoulders, like it always has. The resentment I feel now isn't loud, but it's steady. I'm tired of being the one expected to clean up her choices. I press call before I can talk myself out of it. Rebecca has been our lawyer for years. She handled the paperwork when we added Vanessa's name to the cabin deed. At the time, I felt proud. Now the memory makes my stomach twist. "Heidi, it's good to hear from you," Rebecca says when she answers. Her voice is calm, reassuring. She asks how we're doing. I tell her we need to review some documents. I keep my tone even, but inside, Vanessa's words replay on a loop. "You always make things about you. You'll regret this. Think about how your behavior affects me." Those lines made me feel small for years. Today, they make me feel finished. When we arrive at Rebecca's office in downtown Portland, everything looks orderly and composed. Framed degrees on the wall, a tidy desk, soft lighting. It feels strange that the same room where I once signed away part of my future is now where I'm considering taking it back. Rebecca brings the file into a small conference room and looks at us carefully. "You want to change the deed and the beneficiary on the savings?" she asks gently. She doesn't press for details, but the question is there in her eyes. "What happened?" I explain simply. I tell her I put my daughter's comfort ahead of my own for a very long time, and that it never led to respect. I don't repeat every word Vanessa said at the table, but I hear them clearly as I speak. "Why did you even come like that?" Alongside the resentment, there's something else now. A clear, settled decision. I'm allowed to protect myself. Rebecca walks us through the steps. Because Mark and I still legally own the cabin and the account, we can remove Vanessa's name. There was no permanent obligation to keep her listed. It requires a few forms and signatures. I listen closely. For once, I'm not thinking about how Vanessa will react. I'm thinking about what keeping things the same has cost me. We decide to place the cabin, worth about $220,000, and most of the $85,000 in savings into a new structure. The Clapton Fund for Women Over 60. The fund will support older women who feel invisible or pushed aside by the very people who should care for them. Rebecca smiles softly when I say the name. She says it feels right. We set aside 10,000 as a cushion for Mark and me. When I sign the papers, each stroke of the pen feels steady and deliberate. There's no satisfaction in taking this away from my daughter, but there is a deep sense of alignment, of finally matching my actions to the way I've been treated. Later that afternoon, back in our apartment, I sit on the couch and open my email. There's a message from Ryan Cole. He thanks me for coming to dinner, then writes, "After what I saw, I don't feel I can recommend Vanessa for the promotion at this time." He says he can't trust someone who speaks that way to her own mother. I read it twice. For years, I swallowed Vanessa's comments and told myself they were jokes or stress. Now someone outside the family has named it clearly. I feel relief and sadness. She could have chosen kindness and still had her career. Instead, she chose to make me the target. Not long after, my phone lights up with a text from Vanessa. "Mom, I just got an email about the cabin. What did you do?" No greeting, no concern for me, only alarm over what's changed. The resentment flares again. Every time she reaches out, it's about what I can provide, never about what she's taken. Another message follows. "You're overreacting, you can't be serious. The pattern is familiar. Any boundary I set becomes an overreaction. Any step toward self-protection is labeled dramatic." I think of all the times I paid deposits, covered bills, built a savings account for her future, only to be made to feel like a burden anyway. Now she treats my decision as an attack. Then another text appears. "We can talk about this if you stop being dramatic." That line lands hard. She's still trying to control the story, to cast me as unreasonable. For a moment, the old urge to explain rises, to list every hurt, every dismissal. But I stop. I remember her words at the table, her voice on the phone, and the papers I signed that morning. I set the phone down and let the silence stretch. When I finally pick it up, I send one short reply. I chose to do something different with my life and my resources. No apology, no explanation, no attempt to soothe her reaction. As I hit send, a steady calm settles in. The resentment is still there, but now it's useful. It pushed me to stop rewarding her unfairness and to build something that might actually help people who know exactly what this kind of hurt feels like. Snow clouds hang low over downtown Portland the day we launched the Clapton Fund for Women Over 60. The air has a bite to it when I step out of the car, but inside the Community Arts Center it's warm. Folding chairs stand in neat rows. A simple banner with our name hangs on the wall, dark blue letters on white cloth. Nothing flashy, nothing polished, just honest. We have a small group, older women from local support circles, a few neighbors, some staff from the community center, and one quiet photographer from the local paper. It isn't a big event, but it feels real. That matters more. Mark squeezes my hand as we walk in. The pride in his eyes steadies me more than I expect. Rebecca is already there, speaking with the coordinator. When she sees us, she smiles and comes over. "Ready?" she asks. I nod, even though my heart is beating faster than usual. Somewhere beneath the nerves, resentment still lingers, a dull ache when I think about how this money was once meant for Vanessa, how completely I trusted her to care about more than appearances. We take seats in the front row until it's time. When Rebecca steps up to the small podium and asks everyone to settle, the room grows quiet. She introduces the fund and shares a brief version of its purpose. No names, no private details. Just that a long-held family property and savings are being redirected to support older women who feel unseen in their own families. As she speaks, I hear Vanessa's voice in my head, calling me dramatic, saying I made everything about myself. The contrast tightens my stomach. I didn't start this to punish her. I started it because I know what it feels like to be pushed aside by the people you love. Then Rebecca calls my name. I walk to the podium on unsteady legs, but my voice comes out clear. I talk about motherhood, about giving without limits and believing that love meant never saying enough. I talk about that Thanksgiving night without naming it. Sometimes, I say, the people you care about most treat you like you're always in the way. And sometimes the only way to stop the hurt is to stop rewarding it. A murmur moves through the room. Heads nod. A few women wipe their eyes. Their recognition settles something deep inside me. I don't mention the value of the cabin or the exact amount in savings, but I know every number. I know precisely what I took back from Vanessa. What surprises me is the absence of guilt. Standing here, I feel steady. The resentment I once aimed inward, wondering what was wrong with me, has shifted. It belongs where it always should have, with her choices, not my worth. Halfway through my talk, I notice movement near the glass doors. Outside, I see Vanessa in a long coat, Tyler beside her. My chest tightens. Of course she came. Not to support me, but because she hates being excluded from anything tied to our name. I can almost hear her tone before she speaks. Confident, entitled, certain she belongs in every room I enter. As I continue speaking, I watch from the corner of my eye. She steps inside just far enough to reach the sign-in table. The volunteer, a young man in a plain sweater, checks the list. I can't hear their words, but I recognize the look on Vanessa's face. She's saying, I'm her daughter. Of course I'm invited. That word, of course, grates. She hasn't checked on me once unless she wanted something fixed. But now there's a banner, a camera, and our last name on display, and suddenly she claims ownership. The volunteer shakes his head politely and gestures to the list again. Vanessa's shoulders stiffen. Even from here, I recognize the sharp tilt of her head, the way she reacts when someone dares to say no. I resent that she still carries herself like the injured party, like I took something that was always hers. The truth is simpler. It was always mine to give, or not. Tyler says something quietly, likely suggesting they sit in the back. The volunteer points to a small sign, private event. Vanessa turns and sees me on stage. Our eyes meet through the glass. For a brief moment I catch anger there, confusion too, and maybe a flicker of fear. Then the volunteer gently closes the door. She stays outside. I keep talking. After the event, women come up to hug me, to share their own stories. One says, "My son tells people I'm too much when I show up. Hearing you say you chose yourself makes me feel less alone." Her words nearly undo me. All the times Vanessa dismissed me as sensitive, dramatic, embarrassing, this room proves I was never alone. A few days later, Rebecca calls. I'm sitting by the window with a cup of tea when the phone rings. She tells me Vanessa's company has paused her promotion. Concerns were raised about how she speaks to people, including her own mother. Rebecca's tone is careful, factual. I listen without interrupting. Part of me feels a sharp resentment that it took a professional consequence for accountability to arrive. Another part feels deep sadness. This is not how I wanted my daughter to learn. But stronger than both is certainty. I didn't do this to her. Her own words did. That night, I sit alone in our small living room. Mark is already asleep. The brochure for the Clapton Fund rests open on my lap. Outside, the city is quiet. I think about Vanessa standing outside those glass doors, and all the ways I stood outside her life, never quite fitting into the picture she wanted to present. The resentment doesn't disappear, but it no longer controls me. It's simply evidence of what I survived. For the first time, something warmer than anger takes its place. Freedom. Freedom from begging for a seat at a table where I was only ever the punchline. Freedom from handing my future to someone who treated me like an inconvenience. And as I sit there, holding that simple brochure, I think of everyone who has ever been told they don't belong in their own family's story. If that's you, hear this clearly. You are allowed to choose yourself. And if this story reminds you of someone you care about, share it. Because sometimes what saves a person is knowing they're not the only one who finally walked away from a table that never made room for them.